many companies can get to $1 million just through grit, brute force, hard work, sacrifice. But you can't continue to run a company that way, pulling all of this brilliance out of his head. And I said, Chet, we've got to get this systematized. We've got to create, all of this documentation and training so we can then turn around and train the coaches to be brilliant masters of what you have proven to work so well for companies.
Becoming a master is not about doing 4,000 things. It's about doing 12 things 4,000 times.
The Ultimate Sales Machine presents the CEO Mastery Show for entrepreneurs looking to grow faster, better, smarter.
Well, I had to bring Stephanie here because she learned the Dream 100 directly from my father back in the day when there was nobody there and there was no Ultimate Sales Machine and nobody knew who my father was, right? And he was just trying to make it happen. And the fact that you were able to be a part of systematizing what he did that was great to then scale so that we could have hundreds of people be trained on his methodology and serve hundreds of thousands of businesses. Your stroke of genius was what my father needed on that back end. So I've brought her from the behind the scenes. She's normally not in front of them. So I'm so grateful.
I like to stay back here.
But your stroke of genius is so good that I had to because I was thinking about all the people that are watching these and enjoying them. And they just needed to hear from you. So thank you for being okay with jumping out in front of everybody and answering some of my questions.
Well, you're so kind. I don't think it was my stroke of genius. I think it was really just the privilege of being able to work with your dad and just being there at the time, really at the grassroots level of CHI, because obviously he'd done a tremendous amount of work and worked with thousands and thousands of companies leading up to that. But him recognizing that he was the one that was doing it all. He was the one that was bringing all of his brilliance. And I think that I just had such a wonderful opportunity to work with him, directly and to go, Chet, we need to pull your brilliance out and the impact that you've had in all these companies. And let's teach others to do what you've proven to be such an amazing, model for so many.
I love it. And for everybody that's listening right now, what we're really going to cover over this, next 30 minutes is just that scaling proponent. How do you duplicate yourself? How do you grow beyond, someone can work so hard to get to that $1 million point, and then what got you to that million is not going to get you to the 5 million mark, right?
That's right.
You need people, you need others that are going to run with you. So, and I love how when you were in your 20s, training all of these amazing 50-year-old men on sales training, they're kind of just looking at you like, what is this? And then my father being able to steal you away and recruit you over to CHI. How did that look as far as systematizing, how did you systematize? Can you just kind of give me an idea of what it looked like when you were starting? Maybe how often did you talk to my father, and then how did it branch out?
Well, first of all, you have a really good point, which is people, many companies can get to $1 million just through grit, brute force, hard work, sacrifice. But you can't continue to run a company that way. And one thing that I learned, from my own experience and from, working with your father is that scalability is so important and what it takes to scale. And so much of that is to, do you want to do all the work yourself and be self-employed? And that's okay if that's what you want. But if what you want is a business that can run without you, that allows you to take a vacation, that allows you to step away and not have everything fall apart, then you have to scale. And that's a different skill set than just the mastery that you might have in your trade or your service or your product or what you do. You now need to put the skill set hat on as a business owner and build those skills as a business owner. And so when we were at the grassroots level of CHI, again, you and I talked about this, one of the things that I didn't quite realize at the time was such a gift was my ability to work with your dad on, 2, 3, 4 hours a week, one-on-one, where I was pulling all of this brilliance out of his head. And I said, Chet, we've got to get this systematized. We've got to create, all of this documentation and training so we can then turn around and train the coaches to be brilliant masters of what you have proven to work so well for companies and so powerfully for companies. So, your dad and I would get on a call and, we weren't using Zoom at the time, right? I don't even know if Zoom even existed. I'm starting to age myself. Well,
tell me about this mastery, the levels of mastery. Can you go into that?
Yeah. So, one of the things that your father would talk a lot about was mastery. One of the quotes that your father shares that I think has resonated with so many people is that it's not about doing 4,000 things, but it's about doing 12 things 4,000 times, and he got that from his karate days, right? And that's what he learned. And so, one of the first steps of mastery, and this really applies to the Dream 100, because as people are, you have created an amazing just set of tools and what you're making available to everybody. And, to do an effective Dream 100, to create an effective best buyer strategy, you can't tip your toe in it. You've got to really master the process. It is a methodical, formulaic process that's so critical to implement. You don't need to come in and feel like you have to bring in your own ideas. Just follow the process. And what I've seen, what you've made available as deliverables for so many people, just follow the process. Yeah. And so, as far as mastery goes, when you talk about the levels of mastery, the first thing is repetition, which goes to that quote around, doing 12 things 4,000 times. Repetition is truly the mother of skill. And so really understanding, now where does that fall in with the Dream 100? Where that falls in with the Dream 100 is the repetition around the training of your sales team, getting your sales reps to practice and role play and own what they're going to say, how they're going to say it. You can't just hand a script over to a salesperson and go, there you go, you're good, right? You've got to train them relentlessly. And just like what we did with the coaches, we had certification training that we took coaches through on, a Dream 100 strategy. And we created case scenarios and we practiced through those, and we worked together as a team to really understand how to do this and then turn around and then support our clients. So that's the first step, is it's repetition. And the second one, that we've talked about for a long time is immersion. If you're going to learn a language, you could study it in a book, or you could, if you want to learn French, you can't do it right now, but you could, go to France, live in France and, live there for 6 months. You're going to catch on so much more because you've immersed yourself in the culture. You're not, the French language is not, just understanding the verbs, and the conjugation of a verb. It's about understanding the culture. And when it applies to the Dream 100, understanding, immersing yourself and learning the full strategy of a Dream 100, immerse yourself in this material and really understanding what that is. And I think the bigger one is, and the third step is you model after the masters. Model after the people that have done it before you, model. And that's what you're giving everybody right now. You're saying, here, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, this is it. It's available to you. Just follow it. So you don't have to think out of the box to do it. Just follow the steps.
I love that, because it's so interesting how many times do we hear that someone says, oh, I did that and it worked. And then they never go back to it. It's like, no, that
never go back to it.
That's where it becomes a policy, right? It becomes the procedure. You are the queen of the 3 Ps, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because, and the 3 Ps are so critical. And that's the part, because, they say the devil's in the details, right? That it's the details that are so critical, that take the brain space, that a lot of times people don't want to stop. Because as business owners, we're reactive to the emails, to the clients, to, serving, reacting to our staff, reacting to what's going on, reacting to the day to day, that if we don't get intentional around taking the time to, as your dad would say, work on the business. If you're not intentional around taking your time around building those things, then your business will not grow. You have to take the time to develop and standardize the way that your business operates. And again, this goes back, same thing with the Dream 100.
Would you like to double the size of your company in the next 12 months flat? Take 30 seconds to answer our quiz on the ultimate sales machine on what's holding you back from growth. The reason is because 95% of businesses will never make it to $1 million in annual sales. Of that, 0.08% of those will reach 5 million. Of that, 1.5% will ever reach 10 million, and 0.004% will ever reach 100 million and beyond. See, in most cases, it's not about your product or service. It is the skills it takes to grow your business. Based on the Ultimate Sales Machine, written by my father, Chet Holmes, voted in the top 10 most recommended marketing and sales books of all time. We can help you get there. All it takes is focusing on one skill area that can double your sales if you have the pig-headed discipline and determination to do so. So be pig-headed. Go ahead and answer those 5 questions on our survey to understand how you can create your ultimate sales machine.
Answer these 5 questions at howtodoublesales.com.
As you're talking about the implementation of this, as entrepreneurs, we like to chase the shiny penny, right? We like to chase, what's the next silver bullet? What's the next fun thing that, what's that new thing that's out there? We got to get down to the foundational elements, get back to the basics around so much of this. And when I've seen, and I think that, let's talk about the mistakes that people have made, because I've seen it, happen over and over again, that when clients go to implement, a strategy like this, hands down, this is a long-term strategy, right? You know it, I know it. It is a long-term strategy. It isn't like I'm going to make this decision and I'm going to get results tomorrow or a week from now. This is, it's a methodical process. And so, when you're in that creation mode, it's exciting, it's fun, you're inspired, it's like something new. But then you're getting into like month 2, month 3, that is absolutely the most critical time that you continue to lean in, that you continue to do the work. Now, so what do you do to make sure? Well, you've got some of that stuff there. You got, examples of marketing calendars, examples of strategic plans, examples of, all the things to set that up. And the more that you have that set up, those are the people that succeed, because they got it. They have their 6 months laid out. They know what they're going to send. They know what medium they're going to use. They know what the message is going to be. They have that all prepared up front. And the beautiful thing is once you do it once, anything, when you're creating anything, it takes a little bit longer. It takes more brain space. It takes more time. But then once you have it created, then when you do it again, it takes half the time, and you do it again and it takes a third of the time. And so all of that creation also lends itself to, future implementations of the Dream 100. Because if you're only doing it once and you only do it for 6 months, you are doing yourself a massive disservice.
I mean, I just think back to one of my first interviews was with Carrie Warburg Block of Earthkind, and she said that she's grown her sales 40% year over year for the last decade by keeping the Dream 100 and never letting off the throttle. Like, she has just
40. So I want, if anyone's listening, 40% year over year for a decade. And because she's implemented the Dream 100, she just never stopped. Right. So that's somebody that's so perfect that just said, I'm going to follow your method. I'm going to follow the model. And this is where, this is what she's got. Like, this is how she's grown her business. And I remember her. I remember when she was at Business Mastery.
Yeah. Yeah. She's come such a long way. I mean, 10 million units she's sold now. I think also it's really interesting because, so you were there, right, when my father started creating his first products, and he's training people on how to do this material. And then people would have some success and then they taper off. So you being the head of coaching it with Chet Holmes, the power of even having somebody that holds your feet to the fire. Can you talk about that for a moment? Because everything that you had just said, like, do you still have the momentum in the third month and the fourth month? Like, that's where you started creating your whole training, right? To assist the clients to actually implement, right?
Yeah. Because it's easy to get distracted. And it's funny. It's like when you go on a diet, and I'm not a big fan of diets. I much prefer a lifestyle, but it's like going on a diet and you lose, let's say you lose 10 pounds, and then all of a sudden that donut's sitting there, and you decide to eat the donut, and then you decide to eat a piece of pizza, and then you decide to eat the macaroni and cheese, right? And it's just kind of like you get this success under your belt.
Yeah.
And then, and you feel great, and you feel healthier, and you feel stronger. And then we get distracted, and we just stop doing what works. It's about having like the success routines in the morning. What does your morning look like to get your day started? It's everything is around, you got to look at what are the choices that you make that's going to give you, the success. And sometimes we start having those successes, and then we veer away from it because we allow distractions to get in the way. And so, I think that was really such a powerful part. It's why I still coach to this day, is because we're outside looking in. We're always giving that outside perspective, because anytime that we're working with a client, we're not an employee. We are working on the outside end. So we always have a way of looking outside and looking at the whole picture. We're not in the forest, looking through the trees, right? We're able to we're able to give that different objectivity. That even happens in my own business. I get coached in my own business because it's hard for me sometimes to see those things, those obstacles.
I think we all need coaches. You look at what is it? Tiger Woods, right? Used to be one of the best golfers in the world, and he had 4 coaches at that time, and he was number 1. You don't get better than that, and you need a coach. I even think so. This last week has been just a wild ride of the Dream 100. It's launching. All these things are happening, right? I'm sleeping not at all, and I talked to Kim Walsh Phillips, who I just absolutely adore. I've met her on Clubhouse, and she called me out. She is just a great coach. I had a conversation with her, and she's like, "You're launching the Dream 100." I'm like, "Yep. In 48 hours, I will start my pre-launch." And she goes, "And you haven't reached out to Russell Brunson?" And I'm like, "Nope. I thought that, I'd launch it and I'd test it out, and then eventually I'd reach out to him." She's like, "Amanda, that is a huge mistake. What are you doing? You need to go and reach out to Russell." And I'm like, "You sure? You think so?" And I'm like, okay. So within 24 hours,
what happened?
Within 24 hours, right? I got Dave Woodward to say yes to an interview. I reach out to Russell and say, "Hey, I got Dave as an interview. Can I interview you?" By Monday, I'm on a Facebook Live with him. Bada bing, bada bam, right?
Bada bing, bada bam, yeah.
Coach pushed me, and I'm like, "Oh, this feels so
that's right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that, that's what a coach is going to do, is they're going to push past the challenge or the obstacle. They're going to get, that's what we do. We get clients to think outside of, what's in front of them, the limitations that they might be seeing, the things that are distracting them, help them reprioritize and focus. And I think, again, as with the Dream 100, if you're going to launch a successful Dream 100, you have to stay the course. Because if you send, if you email, do any social media, send out lumpy mail, whatever that might be, and you have this whole strategy and you do it for 2 months and then you skip a month, all of that was for naught, because what you're doing in a Dream 100 is to create value and build top of mind awareness with your potential partners or clients or whomever you're reaching out to. Mm-hmm. And so that consistency and that momentum is so critical throughout the process. Mm-hmm. And I think as we talk about, the methodical approach, thinking through all the way to, if somebody, what are your sales people going to say? Like, what does the follow-up look like? Even down to the follow-up, down to if somebody calls inbound from one of your strategies, if you call outbound, what are you going to say? How are you going to say it? Having everything laid out step by step is so important, and it will help you keep the momentum going because you're not stopping going, oh, what do we do now? You have everything laid out, and it's that commitment to just keep doing it and being really committed, go the discipline, right? What your dad used to say about all of the people. I've talked to hundreds, thousands of people, at times about Chet Holmes. And that's probably one of the biggest things that people will say that they remember he said was that pig-headed discipline and determination.
I mean, when we were prepping for this, right, we kind of talked about what it takes to keep a team on track and to train them how to operate in the most efficient way possible. And still to this day, every time I write an important email, I think of my father's techniques on email, right? Email etiquette. I mean, you just
change that subject.
You can't let that one go. Yeah. So for what she's referring to, for everyone that's listening, it's so how many times do you write an email and then you change what you're talking about in the email, but the subject line stays the same? So then you can't find it when you're trying to go back and look for it. And how many times, I wasn't even in the company, but I would see on a regular basis him saying, you did not change the email subject line. Change email subject line.
And in big big
always
letters.
In caps. He actually had to turn off caps lock on his computer because he wrote too many emails in caps lock. I mean, let's be honest.
I was the recipient of many of them.
To think, so I would love to hear your feedback on this. Like a CEO that thinks, oh, if I just told my team to do this, they'll understand because this is what I do versus what they think is what you should do. Like what's reasonable to, I don't know. Can you ride this home for like what a CEO should think about when training their staff on anything really?
Oh, you've touched about, this is a very passionate subject for me,
Yes.
because training is one of the most underutilized things in the SMB space, especially. It's one of the most underutilized things. And most people see training as a one-time process, one-time event, but it's not, it's a process. And when people, and here's the thing too, that I think is so important is that there is a difference between education and training. And I think a lot of what companies do is they educate their staff, they educate their team. They might dabble a little bit in the training, but what's the difference? Education is the transfer of knowledge, right? It's sharing of information. It's updating on the industry. It might be even sharing a new script. It might be, talking about some updates on a product. It might be talking about your competition. Like that's all information sharing. Is it important? 100%. It's very important, to make sure that everybody is up to date with what needs to happen and sharing that information and, having product knowledge. But training, if you want to train your staff, you want to train your salespeople, that's around skill development. Training is that application of what you learn. So if you want to train if you want to create, which sounds a little bit oxymoronic, but sustainable change, if you want to sustain the improvement, and your dad talked a lot about this.
Yes.
You can't just do it once, because what happens is you do it once, people will adapt a little bit. They'll take a little bit of it away, but they go back and they get caught up in their day to day, and they get back. People we're lazy. We like to go back to what we know, especially when we're under pressure and stress. We like to go back to what we're comfortable with and what we know. So the idea is how do you get somebody comfortable with something new? Repetition. You train over and over and over again, and you have them practice it. I talk about, you get it into your bones. It becomes a part of you. When I used to work for AT&T way back when, we used to do a qualification. We'd have these qualification questions, and they would train us relentlessly. AT&T was amazing on their training. And I still to this day, 30 years later, still remember in, out, and across. Ask clients about what calls come into your business, the calls that go between your business, and the calls that go out of your business. That is ingrained in my brain, right? The idea of the different, like we talk about we haven't really touched on that, but I also created something called power phrases with our coaches, and I wrote down some wonderful, just brilliant things, because your dad was a true artist. And one thing that he was so great with was his words and how compelling he was in the way that he spoke and the copy that he wrote, the plays that he wrote, the songs that he wrote. He was a true artist. And so as coaches, and I think even clients, as we're trying to get our arms wrapped around some of these concepts to effectively implement them into the business, trying to explain a concept like the Dream 100, or trying to explain a concept like education-based marketing. For somebody new, it might, you might go, trying to use it in your own words might take you 5-10 minutes. And the client is still looking at you going, what did they just say? What was it? I kind of think I know. Or you could say, which, I actually typed this up because this is what I used to give to the coaches, is, around market data, is that, market data is more powerful than product data, that people are more motivated to avoid pain than they ever will to gain pleasure. And that, how long did it take? That two sentences?
Yeah.
Your dad would, and so I would take these things, I'd have Post-it notes all over when I first started working with your dad. I'd have them on my wall, I'd have them on my computer monitor, I'd have them all that, because these little statements that your dad would say, like, oh my God, that's so good. That's so good. And I would write it down. And then I thought, why keep this to myself? All the coaches need to know this.
Great.
Because if you can just say a few sentences that can shift the way somebody's thinking, then, and not have to go, like you just have a way that they can just go, oh, got it. I totally understand why that's powerful now. I totally understand why that works. It's the same thing with the Dream 100 strategy, that there's a smaller number of ideal buyers and all buyers, right? That it's just those things of really understanding, why do you go after a smaller group of 100 versus mass marketing to thousands?
Where do you think is the biggest place that CEOs mess up when they've gotten the traction, they've gotten the success, and they're trying to grow it bigger than themselves? Where do you think that they falter most?
Well, I think it's similar to what I said before, which is I think that they get distracted and they get reactive. And when we are in reactive mode, I'm sure you've had it. I know I've had it. Every single client I've ever worked with has had it, is where there are those days where you're active and doing stuff all day. And then you get to the end of the day and you look back after 12 hours and go, what did I just do? And what did I do for my business to grow my business? And so the power in being intentional and deliberate around how we determine what our calendars look like, where we're going to prioritize our attention, and having a strategy around, what it is that we want to accomplish. And I think as we look to scale, or as you look to implement, something like this tool, I think that, the mistake that we have is we may make some progress, and then we allow those distractions to pull us away from the progress. And then a month goes by, 2 months go by. You know what I find out most of the time? I'll follow up with my clients that I haven't worked with in a while. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I'll check in with them 6 months later, and they haven't made much progress since we did work together. And part of that, and I've found this so many times in talking with coaches, that same feedback. And I think part of that is again, that's where coaching can be so powerful. That's why a mentor can be powerful. Somebody that's kind of giving you that guidance on the outside, and to consistently work on our discipline. I think discipline is so important, because as a business owner, we don't have anyone that we're necessarily accountable to. We're the top. We're the owner of the company. We're the CEO, the owner, the entrepreneur. And so it's the discipline to do the things that we need to do to get the results that we're looking for. And I just see so many people that stay in that reactive space. And when you're reactive, you got to handle the day-to-day stuff. You got to serve your clients. But I think also there's the opportunity of, how do you do that to scale? Because it can't all fall back on you, because you'll become a bottleneck. So utilizing resources, leveraging resources, bringing on more people to take on, so you can stay within what I refer to as your zone of genius. to do what you're so brilliant at that only you can do. And then delegating and creating the standards and processes for other people to do the work that you don't have to have your fingers in. And so, again, I think that's why this phrase was so powerful for so many people, which was the pig-headed discipline, determination. You've got to be determined. You've got to be disciplined. And in order to implement on the things that you need to implement on, and to focus on the things that are going to grow your business and get your business to where you really want it to be. And, and again, that's where coaching can be so powerful, because a coach is going to remind you and keep you focused, laser focused on those things that are going to get you results. And when you start to veer off, we're going to bring you back. And so whomever that might be for you, I think it's so critical to have that person that can hold you accountable to those goals that you have, so you don't get distracted. If you do training, like you invest in a training program, or you go out and you go to a seminar or whatever, that your level of productivity on average increases about 22%. But when you combine what you're learning, you combine the training, and you add a coach to that, it increases your productivity up to 400%.
Woo!
Which is dramatic.
Dramatic. Stephanie, it has been such a delight.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda.
If you would like to have a profound breakthrough in your business, talk to our team live by visiting chetholmes.com/breakthrough. Good advice is contextual. Get your answers at chetholmes.com/breakthrough. Subscribe for more videos. Claim your free Chapter 4 of The Ultimate Sales Machine. This chapter helps you get 9 times more impact from every move you make. Visit ultimatesalesmachine.com. This has been the CEO Mastery Podcast, brought to you by The Ultimate Sales Machine.